The B-2 bomber is considered to be one of the most advanced bombers to ever take flight, and that stands the same as today. Did you know that the B-2 bombers made history when a few B-2 bombers did what is called the longest bombing run? We'll be talking about the greatest bomber ever created, the B-2 bomber, and before we get into this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all of our videos. B-2 origins. Most of us know this plane as the B-2, but the real name of this bomber is Northrop Grumman B-2 Spirit, where the B-2 bomber is an all-American top-of-the-line heavy stealth bomber that can carry long bombing runs and also has the ability to carry nuclear warheads to deliver them with near-perfect precision. The plane was built during the Cold War at the height of tensions with America and Russia, and this plane was built to be able to give that edge in airspace warfare that Russia did not have. But even after decades of the Cold War being over, the B-2 bomber still stands as the most advanced and the only heavy stealth bomber in the world. The B-2 took off for its maiden voyage on July 17, 1989, which as of today is almost 33 years ago. And that is truly amazing when you consider that this plane, which was built 3 decades ago, is still one of the most capable and deadly bombers to ever grace the skies. Although the first flight was in 1989, it was not formally introduced to the public almost 8 years later in January 1997. You can imagine that the people seeing this plane for the first time would mistake it for a UFO, and in the past people have mistaken the B-2 bomber for a UFO. After all, there's no other plane like that in the world. Let's not forget this bomber was kept a secret for 8 years, all the while taking out missions and tests. What is the B-2 bomber? The B-2 bomber, in its simplest terms, is a stealth bomber. And what is the importance of a stealth bomber? Well, not only can it penetrate enemy lines without being detected, but it can also avoid anti-air missiles. Unlike your conventional planes, this bomber is built in what is called a flying wing design and to hold 2 crew members. The shape of this bomber and the advanced stealth technology used in this bomber means that it can easily avoid radar detection with your conventional radar systems, and that has allowed the B-2 bomber to successfully carry out both reconnaissance and bombing missions over and over again. When they call it a heavy bomber, they certainly were not kidding, because the B-2 bomber can deliver both conventional and thermonuclear payloads as well, and we're not talking about 1 or 2 missiles here. The B-2 can hold a massive convention payload of 80 bombs, which can weigh 500 pounds each, and 16 nuclear warheads in its bomb bay, which let's say is more than enough to bring a country down at its knees. You would assume that a bomber with such capabilities would be breaking sound barriers left and right, but you would be wrong because the B-2 bomber is considered to be a subsonic warplane, which means that the B-2 cannot even push through the speed of sound to reach the speed of Mach 1. Now, why would you not make the baddest and the biggest stealth jet the supersonic one? Well, there are a lot of reasons for that. The first one is a simple law of physics. To go faster, you need more power, and to get more power, you need to get bigger engines, which would not be the best option for the B-2 as it would jeopardize its unique look, but also create more drag due to the bomber being less aerodynamic. The second reason, however, is associated with the stealth aspect of the bomber. Have you ever seen a plane push through the barrier of sound? It is quite loud and not to mention heavy on the engines and requires a lot of fuel, which would again make the bomber lose its value since it would constantly have to refuel, which would mean there has to be another airship to refuel it constantly, assisting the B-2 bomber, or it would have to make multiple pit stops on its way to its target. The immense sound and the shockwave also created would be clearly visible to radar and any other nearby warplanes or warships, which would end up targeting the B-2 bomber. No expense was spared for the construction of these B-2 bombers, and they wanted them to last and also to serve a long time in the air, and even as of today, the B-2 bomber is the only bomber in existence to be able to carry out air-to-surface missiles in a stealth configuration. The longest bombing run. The B-2 bombers were involved in many consider the longest bombing run in history, and even though it seems like a huge achievement, this bombing run was devised after America witnessed the worst terror attack in history, with the 2 towers of the Trade Center being crashed into by hijacked planes, which then crumbled down, killing hundreds of people. And exactly 13 days after the attack, the US president of the time stood where the Twin Towers fell and made this statement, and I quote, "Can hear you. The rest of the world can hear you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon." The operation was codenamed Operation Enduring Freedom, or OEF, which later became a symbol for the global war on terrorism. It was at the beginning of this operation why they tasked 6 B-2 bombers to take on a mammoth flight from Whitman Air Force Base, Missouri to Afghanistan and back. The plane stopped to be refueled 5 times on the trip. The first refueling of the mission was just 4 hours after the bombers took off, and this was done just off the coast of California. After that, the pilots settled in for the log ride to their next stop, which was the next 4 hours for the next refueling stop in Hawaii, and with only space for 2 pilots, both the pilots took turns to fly the plane, taking rests in between as one of the pilots took over the flights. There were 3 other fuel stops in the flight, with the first one being over Guam and then over the Straits of Mallorca, and the last one on the cast of the Indian Ocean near the Diego Garcia, before flying close to the coast of India and over Pakistan before finally finishing the bombing run in Afghanistan and returning over to their base in Missouri. This signaled the start of Operation Enduring Freedom, and the B-2 bomber also became a symbol of freedom and fighting against terrorism. The pilots also referred that one of the B-2 bombers on the mission was called the Spirit of America. The bombers and their history. A total of 21 B-2 bombers were built. These stealth bombers was eventually made in case they needed to go against the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The sole reason why no more was made was because of the disbandment of the Soviet Union in 1990. There were a lot of 20 B-2 bombers built, and one more was commissioned after a prototype for it was asked to be converted into a fully working model. What makes the B-2 truly one of a kind is that there's not a single B-2 bomber in history that has been shot down by an enemy force, further raising the reputation of these fearsome bombers. Of the 21 bombers that were built on, 20 remain in service as one of the B-2 bombers, which were named the Spirit of Kansas and took part in Operation Enduring Freedom, crashed on a routine takeoff procedure at Andersen Air Force Base in Guam on the 23rd of February 2008. The 2 pilots were able to eject in time and able to save themselves, but the B-2 bomber was completely destroyed after it slammed back into the runway before scraping its wings against the runway. The bomber, unfortunately, was completely destroyed as it was scrapped for more than 1,800 meters on the tarmac, and the reason for this? Moisture. For all the tech and all the stealth materials used to build this amazing bomber, in the end for the Spirit of Kansas, all it took was moisture to bring down the state-of-the-art warplane. Built in an era of the Cold War and then later on leading the world against the face of terrorism, the B-2 bombers are certainly one of a kind. For us, it is a reassuring fact to know that we have the B-2 bombers to safeguard us and take out enemies, but for the enemies, this truly is a nightmare come through. A bomber you cannot see and yet one of the well-known bombers in the world. What do you think of the B-2 bomber? Have you ever seen one for yourself? Do let us know about your thoughts down in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe so you can watch more videos like this.